right? Now, if you see this particular PDF, this gives you a basic overview about what are citizen charters, right? What are the recommendations of various committees? What are the advantages and what are the disadvantages? So it's pretty straightforward. And there is one more PDF. It is in Yojana magazine, 2018 Yojana magazine. It also discusses the same principles, like what is citizen charter, what does it try to do. So I recommend you to read this one as well. Now, so for understanding sake, all of you must have a clear-cut idea, right? What is citizen charter? So when we were discussing about work culture, time and again, repeatedly, I told you, like frameworks are there. Frameworks will protect you. So that is what we were discussing. So citizen charters are like two-way streets, right? It will protect the both officer as well as the citizen. So that is the ultimate advantage of a citizen charter. So X being a moral agent in this case, see here it's more about public service delivery. Now why citizen charters are very important? That is a core concept. So how many of you know what is citizen charter, the basic mechanism and all those things? I just want to have an idea, like what do you know about citizen charters before me discussing the same? Just one line summary or whatever you know about citizen charters. Tool which empowers the beneficiary. Okay. What services a citizen get from a given organization? Set of guidelines informing the public about duties of a given office. Okay. Set of principles proactively disclosed. Okay. So is it from government point of view or citizen point of view? Like citizen charter helps whom? I know it's a vaguely worded question. A tool to ensure accountability and efficiency in an organization. Okay. So all of you are basically saying it's a tool, right? Okay. So can we call citizen charter as a contract? So there are contractarian theories, right? In ethics, for example, the categorical imperative or social contract theories. More or less a contract. Okay. See, let me be very clear. First of all, we are discussing citizen charter, implicit contract, that in one way. Okay. So we are discussing for UPSC mains exam, the ethics perspective, not governance perspective. Okay. So that is one way to look at the present topic. Next thing, we cannot look at citizen charter without the governance angle. Is it legally binding or just a framework? So all citizen charters are not, enforceable. Right? Citizen charter per se does not offer you punishment. It is the legal backing to citizen charter which punishes you. So that's a whole different concept. We will just enter into that. So first of all, remember, we are a welfare state. All of you agree that much, right? India is a welfare state. Any doubts on that? No. So India is a welfare state. Now, what is the most important thing for a welfare state? Welfare of the people. So there are no surprises. But how do you do that? Public services. The most important thing being public services. Now, there are two ways to look at public services. Just doing the things for the sake of doing them in timely manner, right? Doing them effectively and efficiently without wasting public money, right? Without wasting public money, that too in a transparent manner with accountability framework. When you do this, that is called as public service delivery. Yes or no? Doing it for the sake of doing is not correct, and doing it in a inefficient fashion is not correct. Doing it by wasting public money is not correct. Doing it in a opaque fashion is not correct. So all the things we have learned till now, okay, all the terminologies will come into the picture. Doing them properly, right? Doing for the right audience, that is also important. Yes, doing it timely. Why? As Peter Drucker says, time is the most important resource, and when not done in the right time, if you do it anytime later also, it doesn't matter. For example, some area is hit with malaria or some other tropical disease, right? So if there is no public service delivery in that particular area, there are no hospitals, no beds, okay, after the death of n number of people, if you improve it, it's a future insurance, but for them it's too late, right? See, public service delivery have ramifications. What are the ramifications? It reinforces the trust. We can go back to that particular concept of electoral corruption, right? Electoral reforms. So whenever we discuss about corruption, we discuss about the single biggest term, that is criminalization of politics. Without public service delivery, there is no trust in the public service mechanisms, and that is why criminalization of politics will improve. So that is why corruption is able to survive. Yes. So just few days ago, election results came in West Bengal. Like around 40% of the people who got elected are having criminal records. So criminalization of politics is alive and kicking. Why? Public service delivery is not reaching the last man in the line. Okay. And without public trust, as I told you, there is no point in writing ethics case studies or any other answer, especially in relation to ethics. Okay. Now, it also reinforces constitutional morality. See, I'm trying to link all the keywords because you need to look at this from a broader perspective. I will right away say citizen charter per se is dead. Citizen charter per se is utterly useless. There are other tools to make public service delivery in a much better fashion. So citizen charter is a very old typical bureaucratic jargon concept which is not going to get any results, but we still need to know why public service delivery is important and how citizen charter and other mechanisms we are going to discuss will continue the same, right? So how does trust by delivering public service delivery enforces trust into constitutional morality? We have social justice, we have DPSP, right? We have development, that is human development, we have sustainable developmental goals. So all these things can happen by linking it to the trust. When public service delivery is given in a responsible fashion, the trust will be developed in the society, and the trust leads to delivering of all these things. When all these things are being delivered, automatically it will reinforce the trust. It's like a cycle. Are you able to follow so far? Right? So when we say public services, because citizen charter says what? It is a tool, or as you have mentioned, it's a document, it's a contract which guarantees some amount of public service in a time bound manner. Here the only important thing is time. So if we remove the time, what? You are a citizen X, you went to a government office, you asked for a public service, it will be delivered. When? Nobody knows. Okay, what should you do? You don't know. Who should be contacted? We don't know. When we don't know all these things, what is the simplest tool? Citizen charter. So what does citizen charter do? X will know I have to take 10 documents and give it to the government office. After giving it in the government office, within 3 weeks, okay, my public service delivery has to happen. If it is not happening, what should I do? I should contact someone called as grievance redressal mechanism. So typically speaking, this is the only extra layer that has been given by the citizen charters, right? It empowers citizens by informing him. Does that automatically translate into some public service delivery? It may or may not. Are we clear? So it's a form of contract. It's like a pseudo contract. It's like contract but not contract. You are supposed to get it in 3 weeks. You may or may not get it. If you don't get it, if there is a legal provision, there will be fine, punishment to the officer. If there is no legal backing, there is no punishment to the officer. So in a way, it's to pacify the people who are craving for good service delivery or good governance, right? No. So yeah, so why public service delivery is because for constitutional morality, that means all the constitutional values will be implemented in letter and spirit. So that is also one important thing. Next, as I was discussing about the word time in the public service delivery, so it is like 3 weeks or 60 days or whatever. So that is one way to look at it. The other one is doing it in the right time. This is the most ignored part of the citizen charters or public service delivery. Right? Why? Because this is very common. Even if you go to State Bank of India, there will be a board which says if you want a DD, demand draft, 15 minutes. Yes, if you want a DD, it's like in 15 minutes. So that is time bound delivery. But for public service delivery, this is more important. This time, doing the things in the right time, which actually tells you two things. What are the two things? If you remember that Better India article, that MBBS IAS officer Rajendra, I think this he belongs to this particular category, whereas everybody else can come under this particular category. You are doing your job because there is a legal enforcement, whereas time bound delivery means it also implements responsiveness and proactiveness. You are anticipating the needs of the people. You are expecting what will happen and you are planning ahead to deliver the public services. For example, you are organizing Kumbh Mela. What is the first thing you need to do? You need to plan for disaster management, right? And at the same time construct public toilets, health camps, etc. So this is proactiveness. You are anticipating what needs citizens will have, and you are preparing yourself in advance, right? So if you understand this, then why legal enforcement can be easily understood. Okay. There is no need for citizen charter if there is proactive delivery, right? Again, that is not exactly true. For example, I can set a standard operating procedure. For every 1,000 people, I will set up 30 toilets or 10 toilets or something like that. It will protect the bureaucrat as well from, you know, uh, for resource management, from excessive criticism. So it will draw a boundary, right? It will keep you within the framework. At the same time, it will protect you from the external pressures. So in that way, it's a win-win scenario for both the people and the bureaucrat. But I'm taking extreme examples for a day-to-day understanding. But if you go to Indian Post Office website and see the citizen charter, they are more or less about this particular time, right? I'm just giving you the essence. Yes, whenever there is proactiveness, automatically the need for citizen charter comes down heavily. And second thing, proactiveness comes not probably in every time, right? There are many issues to proactiveness. Yes, citizen charter is positive reinforcement, and also utilization, optimum utilization of resources. See, citizen charters make sure that you are using your resources efficiently and effectively. So optimum utilization of resources is also to be taken care when we are discussing about the citizen charters, right? You cannot humanly expect to create 450 beds overnight or to take care of everyone. Let's say there is a government hospital, there is a Ministry of Health citizen charter. So we will maintain shifts for doctors, 8 hours of shifts or something like that. But in reality, if you are not hiring doctors, you literally cannot enforce the 8-hour shift for doctors, right? Because if a doctor is overstressed, if he's performing some operation or anything, okay, there are chances that he might do some mistakes, and that will lead to a lot of problems. So writing citizen charters is one thing, and reinforcing them is one thing, and having the frameworks are one more thing. No, so again, I think I'm going away far away from the core of the topic. Here the time is public service delivery. Like X work will be done in X amount of time. Okay, so that is the basic understanding of citizen charters, and we will continue with the same. Now, one more point I want you to remember is the entire concept of citizen charters flows from UK, right? So there is a concept called as new public management. So for public administration students, it's very easy topic, new public management. So instead of being the father and mother, the my-bap culture of the government, we are moving towards governance. We are steering. I mean, we are telling like what way to go rather than we are dictating. Am I audible? So there was this power cut, so my net got disconnected. Yes, okay. So due to power cut, yeah, the entire thing got disrupted. Yes, so right. So where was I? I probably at the new public management, right? Yes. So new public management, the primary objective was to empower the citizen. Remember that is the most important thing, right? Now, so some keywords. The most important empowerment is from bureaucratic centric to this is what new public management tries to do to move everything towards citizen centric. Okay, so so what is the crux of entire citizen charters? Citizen charters are an idea brought out in UK. Okay, the primary target is to citizen centric governance systems to make the citizen heart of the entire system. To keep him as the heart of the entire system is the root cause for creation of citizen charters. Now, there is no direct question in UPSC so far about citizen charters because citizen charters have kind of run out of the steam. Citizen charters So this is the paradigm that India is going through. First, we introduced good governance, then we introduced citizen charters. Then from citizen charters, we are moving on towards time-bound public service delivery. From time-bound public service delivery, we are moving towards doorstep delivery within time-bound public service delivery. That means governance modes are increasing along with increase in information communication technology and awareness. So the more the citizen is aware, the more he is demanding the services from the government and the less the corruption and the delays, right? So this is the paradigm that India is going through. So this is from Delhi, right? The Delhi government. We can cite Jan Suchna portal as one more example or tool which brings time-bound public service delivery. So all these things are natural flow of good governance concept. So what is good governance? Good governance is all about public service delivery. So we are discussing the same concepts. Yes. And one more point you have to remember is citizen charters or the entire public service delivery cannot work without human resource and capacity building. For example, there is a branch where 1,000 people will visit every day and I will still have 10 employees is never going to work, right? And with the changing in technology, if I don't empower my employees, then also citizen charter or public service deliveries are not going to work. Yes. So it's a holistic package. You do one thing, you have to do the other thing automatically. You cannot promise a electricity connection in 3 days and not hire new employees with the growing demand, because the same employee has to take care of the repair works, maintenance works, other works, and then go for uh, new connections. So he cannot do all the things simultaneously. So capacity development, resource management, employee management, so all these things are also part of the citizen charter concept. As long as you keep a status quo on the existing number of employees or their capacities and their training, and expect public service delivery, it cannot literally happen. Okay, that is one more way to look at it. Now, right. So I'm just giving you a brief outline of the entire discussion, right? And remember, citizen charter concept is not unique to India or UK alone. Almost all the countries in the world have brought in this citizen charter concept. So again, timeline, if we look at it, in 1991, India went for LPG reforms. One of the key conditions for World Bank and IMF to support India during its crisis is what? Good governance. So for the first time in India, citizen charter discussion seriously happened in 1997. Okay, so during IK Gujral time, citizen charter has been discussed seriously. Okay, action plan for effective and responsive administration. So that was a discussion. You don't have to remember any of this basic understanding, but you need to understand till 1997, literally we are not bothered about promising even what is your right. We are not even telling the citizen what you should do, what you should get. But nowadays there is a huge change, right? Everybody is aware. If I'm going to a bank to open a bank account, like I know all the documents and I need, and most of it is digital. So there is a huge leap from 1997 to 2021. We cannot use the same literature. Even the second ARC is in a way outdated because it's in 2005, right? So 16 years have passed, almost 16 years have passed, and there is a huge change in the suggestions given by second ARC report and the things that are happening at the ground level. Okay, so just be pragmatic and keep an eye on the realities of the society also. Okay, so what is the significance of citizen charter? In the first line itself we have discussed, right? It boosts accountability, it enhances good governance, and it gives measurable standards. So as all of you know, the famous line, what gets measured gets improved. Now if you go to a particular government office for water connection or something like that, it's very easy to measure. You will be promised within 3 weeks. Or for example, solid waste management, your city or your municipality promises you that every 3 days your solid waste will be picked up, or every 2 days 1000 liters of water will be given to you. So these are all promises that we can measure and improve, right? So that keeps a mechanism or a accountability standard on the public service provider. So it's easy to follow up as well. So a civil society can survey the entire Hyderabad and say, municipal water is not being given to these areas. More water is given to these areas. So there will be some parity, right? So accountabilities will be increased. A government officer cannot shout on you. Okay, so these are all the changes that government tried to bring. See, again, as I told you, this is like way back in 2005. So we are in 2021. There is a huge change, but still, the more we change, the more we remain the same. That is also true. But the thing is, we have improved. See, in most government offices, what happens is you will be shielded. The time works says 3 weeks. So literally, you don't have a moral authority to go before 3 weeks and put a pressure on the officer. So in that way, it will give some breathing space to the officers. They can manage the things in their own accord. It will obviously enhance transparency and openness. But in real life scenario, we will take a realistic example. So you are an employee, you filed for a pension, right? So it has to go through the desk of officer 1, officer 2, officer 3, and then finally after 2 works at, let's say, officer 4, you will get the final result of your application, whether when are you going to get the pension or not, or pension is allocated to you from that moment onwards. So when it says 2 weeks, right, he is efficient, he is efficient, he is inefficient. So how does the system differentiate between officer 1, officer 2, and the inefficient officer 3? And let's say it's only a contract, right? It's not an enforceable contract. There is no punishment. So how will you deal with that particular scenario? A dashboard to monitor. Okay. So looking it purely from the citizen charter point of view, this is a failure scenario, right? I mean, but like only looking from citizen charter point of view. Yes. Yes or no? Next. citizen charters fail to infuse value system in the inefficient officers. That is also true. Okay. Or there is one more probability, that is other duties. There can be other duties as well on a particular officer, and he may not be able to deliver the public service in a given amount of time, right? So the summary being, per se, technically speaking, citizen charters have all the right intentions, but at the ground level it is lacking both in letter and in spirit, because some public service officers still don't have a proper citizen charter mechanisms, and even if they have a citizen charter mechanism, it is vaguely worded, right? And there is no meaning to having a citizen charter without grievance redressal mechanism. So when I know that I am supposed to get my pension in 2 weeks, okay, and if it is not given in 2 weeks, and if I can't complain it to someone, and if that someone doesn't have a power to punish, then the entire thing is a drama. It's an eyewash rather than a actual meaningful impact. Are we clear? See, I'm giving you an loopholes. See, because all of you can easily understand what is citizen charter per se, but what actually ails the system is citizen charters at the ground level are a huge failure. They fail to invoke the public service feelings, and they are more like a mechanistic solution rather than a organic solution to the entire problem of public service delivery. I'm not blaming bureaucrats per se, though many reports claim, bureaucrats are inefficient, this and that. It is also equally systemic failure, because system failed to empower them, system failed to protect them, and system failed to buffer them from the shocks. On the one hand, you have to do, election duty, right? You are overburdened. You don't have proper infrastructure. When you are not giving any of these things and you still expect them to do in a time bound manner, it's a very difficult prospect. And second thing, because of the lethargy, as I told you, officer 1, officer 2, officer 3, the inefficient officers are not having any impact whatsoever. They are not feeling the heat. So that is why public service delivery still lags in the country. Yes, any questions so far? See, understand the essence. Essence is very important. The rest is very easy. Isn't constitution itself a kind of citizen charter? I don't it's a constitution is a contract, but constitution is more of an empowering mechanism. It's like it tells you what rights you have. Citizen charter tells you how to exercise those rights. I mean, both are contracts only at the end of the day, right? Now, see, I don't want to spend too much time on citizen charter per se. You read this PDF, but what is the logical extension of citizen charters? The logical extension of citizen charters is time-bound delivery of goods and services. and redressal of the grievances. See, it's not my own assessment. I did not come to this summary because more than 20 states in India have gone from citizen charters to acts. Why? From 1997 till 2021, we understood that citizen charter directly are not going to make any difference in anyone's life unless they are legally backed. Okay, so unless they are legally backed, citizen charters are just a a decorum on the walls. It's like a showcase. Yes, of course there are some good case studies which has improved performance like 20% to 40%. So there are some positive changes because of citizen charters, but all the lethargy, all the established systems in the country has to be broken down, and that is why time bound delivery of goods and services bills have been implemented in many states in the country. Madhya Pradesh, Rajasthan being exemplar examples. At the central level, the bill is still a bill. Okay, it has not become an act, right? So that is one important point you have to remember. Now, what do these kind of bills bring into the picture? What does time bound bills or time bound acts bring into the picture? So it defines who is a public authority, right? Who has an obligation, and it also encourages standardizations of citizen charters. Every citizen charters will have grievance redressal mechanism and grievance redressal officers. So if you see the earlier example I told you, you apply in a government office, you have to get it in 2 weeks. Now you have a grievance redressal mechanism, a grievance redressal officer, and a punishment linked to that. Okay, so here it is now enforceable. So these acts empower the citizen charters through legal backing. See, I assume most of you have read basics of what is citizen charter. That is why I'm moving on in a contemporary fashion. That means citizen charter guarantees you what are the things that you can get in a public service office under what time. So who you should contact. Now, per se, it is not working efficiently. What is the next logical step? The next logical step is time bound delivery of goods and services. So the entire theme runs around one person, that is grievance redressal officers. Just like the Right to Information Act commissioners, here also you will get grievance redressal commissioners, and commission will be established. So that is all there is to understand the grievance redressal mechanism. Okay, so step A, citizen charters not working. Step B, legal backing to citizen charters, that is time bound delivery of public services bill. Step 3, add the word E. Add the word E to almost all the services, electronic public service delivery. If you take Andhra Pradesh, okay, so you're still with me, right? We have good governance, we have introduced citizen charters, then after citizen charters it has been given legal backing through Public Service Delivery Acts. Okay, then we are adding information communication technology. After that, we are adding Kerala has done that literally in 2002. What Arvind Kejriwal is claiming, doorstep delivery in 2020 or 2019, Kerala has literally done it in 2019. Karnataka is also doing the same. Andhra Pradesh is doing the same. Almost all the states are doing, but not doorstep delivery per se, but they have used information communication technology, that is the e-governance part. Okay, now the long story short, what happens here, in the entire scenario, the core objective is citizen empowerment. So that is what is happening. Now, are there still issues with public service delivery? When we are moving so rapidly into bringing in so many things, are we still having issues? This has not happened completely, right? Okay, and this is just one of the parameters in when good governance index measures, one of the parameters used by good governance index is public service delivery, and the next one is e-governance. How comfortable is it for a citizen to access all the services through online mechanism? Do he need to visit the government office? So the less I visit the government office, the less the corruption, right? And when everything is digitized, automatically I will have more accountability, and it will also promote more transparency. So the spillover effects of this continuation of journey is very good. Okay, there is a drastic change in transparency and accountability mechanisms. All that is fine, but still in India we are not able to reap the total rewards. 100% transparency or 100% accountability is still a distant dream, and still middlemen have actually a lot of role. Slowly we are moving away from all those things to a better public service delivery mechanism, but it has other ramifications. As I told you, capacity building, upgrade the government offices and infrastructure. Without all these things, public service delivery is not going to improve. And next, when you do all these things simultaneously, you have to also work on work culture. For example, as earlier you people were pointing it out, 1, 2, and 3, if there is a real-time dashboard, or if there is a real-time update or internal mechanisms, internal grievance redressal mechanism. That means file is with me for 2 days, 3 days, 14 days. Then Mr. 1 and Mr. 2 should have an option to complain on Mr. 3, or only Mr. 3 should be held accountable for public service delivery delay. Right? When you create such kind of atmospheres, the work cultures will change and public service delivery will automatically improve. That is a very important point you have to remember. We can keep bashing the bureaucrats day and night, but at the same time we have to remember 90% of them are good, only 10% of them are rotten apples, and they are the root cause of decay in the entire governance systems, because those 10% are linked to politicians or other format of corruptions. And because of this 10%, public service delivery will slow down and criminalization of politics is continuing unabated. So to change the entire system, we need to introduce time-bound service delivery bills and also upgrade the human capital, social capital, and reinforce the trust on the system. Clear? You might feel, SAR is telling the same thing in 10,000 words, but you need to have a logical conclusion of the same, because when you sit in the exam hall, it should have a logical sequence. Why we moved on from citizen charters to public service delivery bills? From there onwards, how are we reinforcing them with information communication technology, and how and why we are moving towards doorstep deliveries? Because if we link it to a next concept called as decentralization, that is where the entire game changes, because decentralization is what citizens need. Because I know the problems of my level, my village level, or my area level. Only when decentralization happens, public service delivery can happen in a tailor suited fashion. If public service delivery is planned from the top to bottom approach, okay, you will have one size for all post offices in India cannot and should not have a single citizen charter. Its essence should be same. Its essence should be same, but you cannot have a single citizen charter for all the post offices in India, because geographical reasons, manpower reasons, and other reasons. But its essence should be the same, public service. But when you decentralize without essence, dilution of the essence, and still able to deliver what you have promised, that is where good governance is really shining. Now the entire picture is complete. I hope you can see the larger picture. Now, have we achieved the pinnacle of governance systems? Did we decode what should be done in India to promote public service delivery? Good governance, citizen charter, public service delivery, add ICT. It's like a recipe, right? E-governance, decentralize. So if you do all these things, have we achieved the pinnacle of public service delivery? Information communication technology is the panacea to public service delivery issues in India. Critically analyze. Now, all the things we have discussed above, like this flow chart till decentralization point, is useless without what we call as feedback loop, right? So the first and foremost thing for public service delivery is, are you asking the person who is getting the benefit, that is there anything to improve, right? And if he says something, are you open-minded enough to take that criticism? Next, do you have the time and resources to rectify the mistakes? 3, do you have the flexibility to implement them? Are you all these things? Only then. Yes, so we are coming to that, Sharath. That is where I am trying to bring in the citizens' involvement, right? So here, what we are discussing is the most important thing is feedback loop. So let's say a particular police station in a remote area of Karnataka have a different set of requirements, but the resources are not available. Even though if it is flexible, even though if it is responsible, but without resources, that particular police station cannot deliver public service delivery in the essence. See, at the end of the day, it's the values, right? Value system. So everything is built around value services. So public service delivery is for the welfare. So as long as we keep that value system as the core, everything is supposed to work. But when we don't have a feedback loop, when I don't want to listen, or even if I listen, there is no way for me to implement those changes, then the entire mechanism will collapse. For example, in India, we don't have citizen report card. You take a municipality, Hyderabad municipality, you have e-governance, you have Hyderabad GHMC app, right? You have all these things. You have, GHMC app, e-governance, you have dashboards, but there is no such thing called as citizen report card. So what is citizen report card? It's one more tool which acts as a feedback. What does that tell you? You can ask certain questions. Are you happy with the services delivered? Are they coming in time? Is there any corruption? Are you unsatisfied? Can something be made better? So you can frame say a set of 10 questions, and you can take feedback. If you're scoring, let's say, more than 60%, you are doing fine. If less than 40%, you're doing pretty badly. Then all the information communication technology and apps in the world are failing you. So public perception has to be taken into the consideration. Yes. So this has been experimented in Bengaluru. Okay, that too by a civil society organization. One advantage of Bengaluru is many software engineers are there. Almost all of them are socially active. Citizen awareness is high. So that is why civil society was able to implement citizen report card in that particular city. But we can expand it to many cities, many places. So everybody who is getting a public service from any government office or departments can have a random sampling of citizen report cards. So the more feedback you get, the more feedback you have, the more you get informed. For example, you are traveling in Indian Railways, you get the railway meals, right? Okay, the problem is nobody has the courage to give a feedback mechanism after a railway meal. So if you actually honestly take the feedback from all the railway meals in the country, half of the contractors will be out of the jobs, right? I'm not saying everybody is bad, but majority of them are very, very bad. For the money we pay and the service we get, it's very bad. So the IRCTC is a private and all those things can be brought in. But the thing is, the essence is you have to keep measuring. Now, why are we silent on this measuring part? Because even the politicians know, we know system is not perfect, but we also know resource crunch is there. There is a limitation on the budget, there is a limitation on the money. So that is why we don't have public service delivery, or there is perfect public service delivery value system. So not everything is ICT. So don't fall into the trap that I throw technology and all the problems in the country will be solved. That won't happen. The best possible thing is Now I will take a contemporary example. Now let's imagine there is an app which says that all the citizens can visit government hospitals from now onwards and make sure the there is proper benchmarks. For example, what we call as let's say a particular state has passed an ordinance or something saying every hospital should have minimum 100 beds and 40 oxygen cylinders from now onwards. Whether you use them or you don't use them, that is the minimum benchmark, service level benchmark, right? So you cannot measure it through apps, or you cannot measure it only through citizen charters. You have to involve, you have to bring in these people. Now that locals or people in and around that government hospital knows that we no longer can ignore public service delivery and we have to make the government accountable, service level benchmarks will help increase that public service delivery. The pooling of the people, that means decentralization can happen through apps or ICT, right? But the ground level work has to be done through involving the citizens. So citizen empowerment is the core that we can bring in to develop the public service delivery system in the country, right? And for example, as I told you, I think in Andhra Pradesh or some state in Karnataka, I think there is a 3-day file rule. That means a file cannot stay at one person for more than 3 days. If a file stays at one particular officer for more than 3 days, he has to give in writing why it has been delayed, and there should be a very valid reason for the file to be delayed. So this is also like fixed timelines. This is one of the major drawbacks of the citizen charter, right? So now this can be solved through fixed timelines. Compulsorily it has to move after n number of days. But again, please remember, capacity development, infrastructure, support, training, all these things also have to happen simultaneously. Only then these fixed timing rules will work. Yes. Now, coming back to Sharat's question, a bureaucrat is also a human being, a bureaucrat is also an employee. So whatever we are discussing, like the external mechanisms, like Right to Information Act, citizen charters, time bound service delivery bills, yes, punishments, fixed rules. So all these things will act on external ways. When there is a support system, it's very easy for me to become a human being. Like it is easy for me to be responsive and sensitive, right? I will be responsive and sensitive when I don't have too much on my plate, and when there is a good support system from the entire ecosystem. Because if I am the only officer working, 1 and 2, and there are 9 people like Mr. 3, inefficient, then literally I cannot be responsive or sensitive, because I know even if I do my job perfectly, system will still fail you and it will slow you down, right? And there are rigid hierarchies, we have discussed. If a higher bureaucrat or a politician is involved in delaying of the service, there is literally nothing that Mr. B can do, right? So culmination of all these things. So how are we making sure that all these things will come into the picture and reinforce the value system? By making sure that framework is there to help the citizen, by involving the citizens. Automatically B is alone, now B is having community support. When community and support pushes for a particular thing, there is no other option for the hierarchies to but to listen, right? Do you think there is any one government hospital in India as of today which will say no to a doctor's request for more beds or oxygen? They literally cannot say no, right? But they also have a limitation of resource. Now they will find a resource. Till now they have the luxury to say no, but now they will be forced to find the resource. So that is the difference. If you can understand this last one thing, I think the entire public service delivery mechanism and ethics paper will come into a clear picture. Till now these people were also sleeping, right? There is a gap. Nobody knew where the government hospital was. Nobody knew whether we had oxygen tankers or not. Nobody knew whether we have oxygen cylinders or not. Nobody know whether there was cold storages or not, right? Cold storages here is for the vaccine sake. So nobody knew. There is a huge gap. There is a huge asymmetry between a honest bureaucrat community, and there is a different priority set for the higher echelons. They had different priorities. Now the system understood there is a pressure on the system. This is the high time. So that is exactly where the Winston Churchill quote fits perfectly, right? Never waste a crisis. Every crisis is a wonderful opportunity. For every honest bureaucrat out there in the country, this is the golden time to kick everyone and get the things done, because nobody is in a position to say no. All he has to do is give something in writing and say, we need these things, and the higher authorities have nothing to say but say yes, 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 and yes. When let's say Article 370 was happening or Citizenship Amendment Bill was happening, if I go and say, sir, we need more oxygen cylinders, probably even if I was the Prime Minister, I wouldn't have listened, because I was in a whole different mindset. Now when COVID is killing thousands of innocent Indians, so this is bound to happen, right? Now we cannot wait for pandemic to teach a lesson, right? So that is where proactive leadership has to come into the picture. There should be a proactive community, there should be a proactive politician. When these two things come together, and if there is an existing mechanism, things can get done. I hope you are able to follow me so far. Any questions? Right. So please read the 3 PDFs that I have shared. It will make more sense to you. And I will also share the follow-up notes with value addition from the current affairs. So that will complete the entire topic. Okay.